Jamar Chase told you he was going to break all the records. Well, one of them is out of the way in his rookie season.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. Today we come to you after the Bengals regular season has concluded. Thanks for listening to the Locked On Bengals podcast. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or that follow button on wherever you listen to your podcast. So we're delivered to your device every day we upload an episode. The Bengals finished the season at 10-7. James, we're going to start with a little bit of a review of the preseason game that happened in Week 18 today in Cleveland. And then we're going to talk about Jamar Chase and his record-setting effort. We're going to conclude with, as late as we possibly can, a look at the playoff scenarios as they are as we're recording. Now, we're recording this about 5:30 Eastern time is where we're starting this, James. So obviously, still some things to be decided, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those scenarios that by the time you listen to this may or may not be partially dated. But James, let's start with the game itself. You were there in person. Looked like the stadium was about, 30% full. Had the feel of a preseason game with backup quarterbacks playing. The Browns did play a lot of their starters, at least more than I thought they would. And ultimately, I think that was the difference in the game. That's one of the reasons Cleveland won this game is they simply played more dudes. But credit the Cincinnati Bengals backups because it was almost entirely backups besides like Isaiah Prince and Hakeem Adeniji, who started the season as backups. And they made this close. They were falling on a fumble either on the onside kick or the punt where there were two fumbles away from maybe having a chance to win the game.
Yeah, they battled 21-16, and look, they shouldn't have won the game, and they didn't because you're right. Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, Jarvis Landry, like a lot of these guys are Nick Chubb, they're playing. And so you look at the other side, and it's Chris Evans, and outside of, and we'll get to Jamar Chase, but 4 plays of Jamar Chase, Trent Irwin and Trent Taylor and Mike Thomas and Stanley Morgan Jr. And it's just, you compare one to the other, and it's very clear the Browns, they wanted to win this game. And I think the Bengals wanted to win, but they took the long-term view. And they were right because we're going to get to playoff scenarios. But what we do know as we record this is, one, the Titans are the number 1 seed. And if the Bengals would have won by 50,000 on Sunday, the Titans would still be the number 1 seed. And guess what? The Chiefs, the number 2 seed. So the best the Bengals could do anyway is stay at the 3 seed. And the worst they could do, and they knew that, is go to the 4 seed. So to me, it's worth it because they treated this like a bye, essentially. They snuck out of it, I think, pretty damn healthy. And you got a lot of these guys some run. And one key guy, Trey Wayne's got a lot of snaps, I think. And who knows, maybe you need to rely on him in the playoffs at some point. Mike Daniels with Josh Tupou not returning to the game with an injury. He looked good, so maybe you need to bank on him. So there were some veterans that showed something. And then our guy Chris Evans as well, I think played relatively well considering the circumstances.
Yeah, you wanted him on the bench, right? And he did.
He's too valuable.
Time. He is valuable, and he was really good. I thought he had 7 carries for 35 yards. He had 4 catches for 24 yards. Get this, James, the Bengals' top 2 targeted players in the receiving game today were Chris Evans at 5, tied with Mitchell Wilcox for 5. So yeah, it gives you a bit of an idea of the weapons that Brandon Allen was working with. And Brandon Allen wasn't very good today. He had issues with the play clock, and I think they had to call 2 timeouts. They took a delay of game. Not his best day, not friends with that play clock in was First Energy Stadium. Is that what it's called in Cleveland?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, wasn't very accurate down the football field, was luckily accurate enough for Jamar Chase on a couple passes behind the line of scrimmage. And we'll talk about what exactly Jamar Chase did in a little bit. But the one thing that did go in the Bengals' favor in this game, James, was they won the turnover battle. They had that fumble 6 in the first half, second quarter. And Mike Hilton, who was in the game for Vernon Hargreaves, who left with a pretty ugly ankle injury. Hope he's okay, but didn't look great on replay. Mike Hilton almost had a pick six. He trips in the middle of the field. He would have had to go a really long way, and it's not like he has that Olympic speed that you see on pick sixes from the end zone. But he had a chance as the half was coming to an end, and he ended up tripping around the 30-yard line or so, and then took an unfortunate shot when he was on the ground. I don't think he played after that, but by all accounts, because I know this was a question for some folks because it wasn't mentioned again, he's fine. He's not hurt. So that's some good news.
Zac Taylor said he returned, but I agree with you. Like, it didn't feel like he did. Either way, yeah, he was healthy. He talked to after the game. He talked to us, and I wonder if he would have taken the lane on his left side, on the near side, where we were at the press box. I think there might have been a better chance for him to, make it a pick six, but unfortunately not. It was a dirty hit, by the way, by one of the linemen. Who was it? Treader? I think it was Treader who came
It
in
was
late.
it was it was not Treader. It was Wyatt Teller, the
It
other
was
T
Teller.
name. Yeah.
Teller and Treader. Yeah, Teller. It was Wyatt Teller. Yeah. So dirty ass hit there. And they did flag it, but still, you don't want to see that, especially because he wasn't supposed to play and he wasn't supposed to be in there. And again, I think that's the big takeaway is Zac Taylor, what looked at this game and said, we have the confidence, we're rolling enough, and we're going to be fine if we go out there with our backups and lose. And heck, they had a chance to win, like you said. And Brandon Allen, man, by the way, missing Chris Evans on that 2-point or Trent Taylor on the 2-point conversion, just ugly. And then it was a fumble here, fumble there, where if they recover one of them, maybe they sneak out of First Energy Stadium with a win, which would have been wild. I didn't expect them to. Yeah, because here's the thing is when I made my prediction the other day, I assumed that some of these guys would get some run. The moment, like Tyler Boyd didn't even warm up. Jamar Chase was half warming up, it felt like. And Jermaine Pratt was on the sidelines during warm-ups. I'm like, oh, this is different. This is on another level. And so instantly I changed, and I think that's why Vegas had the Browns as 6-point favorites going into it.
And they didn't cover if it stayed at 6 points. They only won by 5. So Bengals backups, way to go. And Cleveland did play their backups like late in the game. It's not like they were running their starters out there the entire game, but they clearly put more importance on this game than did the Bengals, and rightfully so. This is their last game of the season. You see coaches all the time wanting to go into the offseason with a win. And for the Bengals, and we'll talk about the playoff seeding scenarios in a few minutes. To Zac Taylor's point, there's so much outside of their control that risking injuries to players they need healthy in the playoffs, regardless of who they play, just doesn't make sense. It's a good calculation on his part because you have, the Colts losing unfathomably, getting blown out by Jacksonville, and that just throws the entire AFC playoff picture at that point into chaos. And even now, as we're recording, we still don't know that there's still 3 teams the Bengals could hypothetically play. So I think good decision by Zac Taylor to try to get out of this game healthy. Unfortunately, they do sustain some injuries to some guys that are rotational pieces, or depending on Hakeem Adeniji, guys that are starting for them, guys that play. So hopefully all those guys are okay, but keeping the other guys healthy, the name brand, the household name guys healthy, turns out that I think it was a good choice, and we'll see how everything shakes out in the rest of the AFC playoff picture. But the one starter that did play a little bit did it to break a record. We'll talk about Jamar Chase's record-breaking play coming up next.
Jamar Chase setting records, breaking tackles, arm tackle city, man. No one wanted to tackle him on that, 24-yard screen pass that broke Chad's record, which we'll talk about. And, man, that dude runs like he's on the Built Bar plan. And if you don't know about Built Bars, they're the #1 protein bar on the planet. And the Browns probably should get on that plan this offseason so they can get back to, what they did last year. But Built Bars taste great. They're covered in 100% chocolate. And there's something for everyone, whether it's salted caramel, mint brownie, coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream. They have a ton of flavors. They have limited time flavors, and they're high in protein. They're low in sugar. They're low in carbs. They're perfect for you as you try to either revamp your body this new year, just find a healthier snack, midday snack, post-workout protein punch, Built Bar is there for you. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your next order. Again, it's simple. Promo code LOCKED15 at built.com to get 15% off.
We're all looking for an edge these days. And today's podcast, brought to you by OnlineGambling.com, is here to help you get that edge. If you don't know already, OnlineGambling.com is a website dedicated to giving gamblers as much of an edge as they possibly can. Throughout the playoffs, they'll be providing you the best NFL tips, most up to date news, and more to help you make your bets as informed as ever. Not only that, they're going to help you not make emotional decisions by giving you this great data. They're on a mission to be the world's most empowering gaming and betting site, giving gamblers the edge as much again as they possibly can. Make sure you visit onlinegambling.com/NFL for all of the latest gambling news and tips to give you the edge throughout the playoffs. Remember, onlinegambling.com/NFL to help you make the most of this year's NFL playoffs. James, you were there in person. It was a pretty cool moment, I thought. I mean, to me, it was a very concerted effort from the jump. We're going to get the ball to Jamar in space around the line of scrimmage and let him do it the yards after catch way. Without Joe Burrow, he wasn't going to break the record on a go route. Instead, he had to do it the hard way. He had to do it himself. What was it like to watch that in person?
Yeah, you could tell right away. First play, I'm pretty sure first play is a screen to him for 2 yards, and you're like, okay, well, they clearly want to get him the ball. Second play might have been a run. Third play, they threw out of bounds. He was looking for Jamar, and it's like, okay, how long are they going to keep Jamar in the game? Is it going to be the first quarter? And I think that was probably the max. But you're right, Chase. The moment he broke it, they yanked him out of there, and to me, I was surprised that the Browns were just kind of like arm tackle city on Chase. So because it's their last game, they're aware of it. I guarantee you. Just they are. They know. Why is Jamar playing? Oh, he's playing because he's about to set this record, or he might try to set this record. I would have hit the hell out of him. And instead, they were trying to arm tackle him. And we know damn well you can't arm tackle Jamar Chase in space. So he turned what? It was just a screen pass, but I think it would have been like a normal 5, 6, 7, 8 yard gain for most guys into a 24-yard gain. Sets the record, finishes the season with 81 receptions for 1,455 yards and 13 touchdowns. And man, look, Chad Johnson was my favorite Bengals player, is my favorite Bengals player of all time. And the fact that this kid just broke the record, and I get it with the 17th game, but really it was like 5 snaps. All right. Not really a 17th game. It was like 16 games and 5 snaps. To do that at 21 years old as a rookie, I know the league's changed a little bit and it's a little more passing and everything like that, but it's special. And what a rookie season for Jamar Chase. I hope it ends with the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. I think he deserves it. I think he's ahead of Mr. Mac Jones in New England, who we could see next week. What a season. But no, it was cool. It sucks it wasn't in front of home fans, right? It's not like Browns fans gave a damn. So there was no like announcement or anything like that. But it was certainly cool to be in witness in person.
Mac Jones, at the moment I'm speaking right now, which is 5:45 Eastern time, give or take. It's about a minute and a half, minute 50 left in the first half in that game. Mac Jones is completing 50% of his passes and has a pick 6. So, looking for a statement, perhaps trying to win, get to 11-6 for the New England Patriots against a division rival going into the playoffs. Not a nice half for Mr. Mac Jones, but yeah, I mean, fantastic play for Jamar Chase. And you talk about the arm tackles, and that's what he does to you because he has that crazy acceleration, the burst, the speed. And I mean, for me, that's what makes him such a special player. We've talked about him a lot this year. He obviously can beat you vertically. He's improving his route running throughout the year. It's only going to get better in the offseason. He's going to be 22 next year. Going to be 22. And he already has the Bengals record. I will say this, James. Yeah, he needed the 5 snaps in this game. And for that reason, it's a 17-game record. Fine, he's going to go out and probably break his own record in his Bengals
Mhm,
career. But he also came out of some games early. You remember the Bengals pulled their starters in games they were winning.
mhm,
Also, I think a game they were losing. I think that happened at least once. But it's not like he played every snap of every game. When the starters were on the field, he was on the field, but he did come off the field, and so there is that as well. But big workload, big productivity, and he showed us that he can do it in every way. And I don't know. For me, I kind of like that it came on a run after catch play because
mhm,
that's I think still the underrated aspect of his game for non Bengals fans, for people that aren't watching really closely. And
mhm.
so I think there's something poetic about it coming that way.
Yeah, and it might be the best part. It might be the best part of his game because I know that's crazy, and I get the downfield. I understand it. He has 8 touchdowns of 30 yards or more this year, which is insane. At the same time, the dude's hard to tackle, and it seems like he's always falling forward. Like when he gets that head of steam, it really is like a running back almost. And the crazy part to me, Jake, is he clearly, much like this team in general, they're flawed. They're not perfect, but I think they have a shot in the playoffs, and we'll spend plenty of time on that. Maybe I'll say it next segment. He's not perfect yet. He's by far, like far off in a way, not even close to the finished product. I think the drops are going to slowly go down, right? Imagine if he had just that catch against the Chargers, right? He would have had over 1,500 plus yards this year, another touchdown, so 14 touch. I mean, so there's just he had a touchdown drop against the Jets, and I'm not saying he's going to be perfect and go a whole season without a drop. I'm not saying that. I think it's going to go down though when you have someone that talented that works as hard as he does, and so, it's exciting to think about the future. It's also exciting to think about what this team can do in the postseason because of a guy like Jamar Chase and the attention he's going to get and what he can do if you don't give him that attention, or what the rest of the guys can do when he does draw that attention and draw those double teams.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how teams play him in the playoffs. I think it'll depend on who the Bengals play against. We'll talk about that in just a minute. A few closing thoughts on Jamar Chase. The thing about Zach Taylor talked about what you just mentioned after the game too, James. When it wasn't Jamar Chase asking, he wasn't begging in, right? He wasn't like, "Let me get the record, coach." It was Zach
Mhm,
Taylor's idea, and it was Zach
mhm,
Taylor's idea. He said because of the way Jamar works. And I think Taylor talked about, it's easy to, when you're that talented, come into the league and ride on your talent. But Jamar, the talked about the work ethic quite a bit, and that is really encouraging for the future. The last note I have on Jamar Chase, James, is going to just be about drops, real quick. Incredibly unstable drops. And yes, you can look at them and say, oh, yeah, he has a concentration issue at times, but that is not something that, since they've been recorded, has been a very consistent thing year over year for most players. Just look at Deontay Johnson, for an
mhm.
example, in Pittsburgh. Led the league in drops last year. This year, for a very long time, had no drops. I think he had a drop today in that Ravens game. So he's had some drops come back in a little bit, but that's just part of playing wide receiver in the NFL. It happens from time to time. And for most players, is not a terribly consistent or stable stat. Coming up next, James, the longer we've been recording, the tighter some of these AFC Week 18 games have gotten, specifically in the AFC East. And we're, of course, recording before the Chargers Raiders game has started, and a lot on the line still there for playoff seeding. We'll talk about the Bengals' path in the playoffs starting next week, coming up next.
But first, I got to tell you about Get Upside because it is the app that is going to save you money. And look, I drove up to Cleveland for the game. I'm going to drive home. And guess what? I'm going to save money every time I fill up with Get Upside, and you can too. It's the incredible free app that you can download in the App Store or Google Play and save up to 25 cents per gallon every time you fill up. Plus, right now with promo code touchdown, you're going to get a bonus 25 cents off per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents off per gallon on your first fill up. All you have to do is download Get Upside and use promo code touchdown. It's that simple. Chase had 13 touchdowns. Joe Burrow threw for 34 touchdowns, and hopefully he throws for about 34 more in the postseason this year. So again, get upside, promo code touchdown, get up to 50 cents back on every gallon of gas that you purchase. And man, it's free money that you can use on your or towards your PayPal account. You can use it for gift cards like Amazon, or you can just have it deposited in your bank account. So download Get Upside and use promo code touchdown.
All right, James, let's talk playoffs. The
Playoffs.
Bengals are going to the playoffs for the first time in Locked On Bengals history. We have a playoff week, and it starts
Playoffs.
today. The
All right,
Bengals
I'm done.
very likely will be the 4 seed in the AFC. However, I know that this, by the time you're listening, has probably been decided. The Jets and Bills is now a 7-10 game. Miami leading the Patriots as they get closer to halftime. So, assuming that these scores kind of stand and both the teams leading the AFC East don't lose, James, the Bengals will be the 4th seed,
Mhm.
which means in all likelihood, with the Steelers being the 7th seed, unless there's a tie when the Chargers play the Raiders, playing the Chiefs in the first round, almost certainly, if the Bengals were to win their first round matchup, means they go on the road to Tennessee in week 2 of the playoffs. Now there are some scenarios like if Buffalo or the 3 seed gets upset where the Bengals would be going to Kansas City instead.
Mhm.
But this is what we're talking about when Zac Taylor's like, look, there's so much outside of our control over what happens in the playoffs and who plays who and who gets what seed that we're going to try to be healthy. And the most likely opponent is we talked about this last week at the time of recording, the New England Patriots. So, there's a world where it could be the Raiders as we record, but for the Bengals, it looks like almost certainly they're going to have one home game in this playoff run, even if they win in the first round, or when they win in the first round is what Bengals fans want me to say. And then they'll be going on the road for the rest of the way as they try to make a playoff run here. And they're healthy. And that's where Zac Taylor wanted to be.
Yep. And look, is there a way where they could get that second home game? Of course, there's there's a way where there's upsets along the way, where they end up getting the AFC title game could be in at PBS if you really wanted to go that route. It's unlikely though. To Jake's point, I do want to bring this up before I forget. And the Bengals aren't going to play the Steelers. The Chiefs are going to kick their ass if they get in. It's fine. But Jake, if you're the Raiders and the Chargers, a tie on Sunday night, and I don't even think the NFL would want this to happen. I think they would be angry. But if those two teams tie, they both get in and the Steelers are out. I don't know, man. I'd be tempted to be like, hey, let's just tie. I know it's impossible. I know it wouldn't happen, but I swear if I had a good relationship with the coach on the other side, and I don't know what the relationship is, with the Raiders and Chargers outside of them being in the same division, but would you tie? I would tie.
I mean, imagine I like John Sharon's tweet about this. Imagine this was like the Ravens and the Bengals, and both teams just needed to tie and get in. Otherwise, the winner would go in.
It's
They would not. They would never take knees for the whole game. They would try to beat the crap out of each other and try to kick the other team out of the playoffs. These division
Yep.
games, man. I I,
Yep.
I just I just can't see it happening. Like maybe if it was like San Francisco back when Harbaugh was the coach there in Baltimore, and it was brother coaches and they were in different conferences, then
Yeah.
maybe you could see it, right? But in a division matchup, I have serious doubts. There is, however, a pretty realistic case where the Bengals could play the Raiders here if the Raiders manage to beat the Chargers. So let me ask you this, James.
That's what I want. Go ahead.
Yeah, would you would you rather
Should I just
have
answer it?
the Raiders and a good pass rush, Yannick Ngakoue, Max Crosby? We talked about those guys, Max Crosby, or the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick and Matt Judon and J.C. Jackson and Devin McCourty and all those safeties they put on the field. I think this is a pretty easy one, and so there's a couple of ways you could think about this. If the Bengals had won today for the 3
Mhm.
seed, we'd be sitting here thinking, okay, if the Chargers beat the Raiders, the Bengals are playing the Chargers. Since the Bengals lost, we're sitting here this afternoon and we're thinking, are they going to get the Patriots or the Raiders? The only way that the Bengals get the Chargers is if the Bills and Patriots both lose. And as we record, I would say that's still very unlikely, even the way those games are going so far. But who's your favorite first round matchup, James? If you want the Bengals to continue to win in the playoffs, which we do, because then we get to continue to cover playoff games.
Yeah, no, I do. Absolutely. I'm rooting for the Bengals to win. I hope they win every damn playoff game ever. And, I got you doing the gritty on Super Bowl 56 in LA. Who knows? That's in your time zone. Never say never. I might get Jake Lisco out of Canada. But that being said, yeah, the Raiders. The Raiders. Absolutely the Raiders. I get it. They have 2 pass rushers. All right. Joe Burrow's dealt with that all year. And, outside of that, what's the scary part of it? But where Darren Waller, okay, that's fine. But the Bengals should be able to beat the Raiders. And if they can't, then if they lose to the Raiders, do I think that they're going to beat Bill Belichick? Hell no. Do I think that they're going to beat the Chargers and Justin Herbert? And I get it. Joe Burrow's better than Justin Herbert. But he's still really good. So I think the Bengals can beat any of those teams, by the way. But if I had to pick one, it would be the Raiders. And if I had to rank them, I'd say I'd rather face the Raiders, then probably the Chargers, because they're up and down, even though I think their ceiling might be better than the Patriots. I just think that the Patriots are going to be more stable. And I just think back to those years when Bill Belichick would just fluster Peyton Manning. And he doesn't have that same personnel or defense. I get it, but still, I can't help but think about that. And then the Patriots third.
He also doesn't have that same quarterback who could punish you if
Don't
the
remind me.
defense was good. So, imagine like the game in which the Bengals offense was the most bottled up was probably the Broncos game, right? At least in recent history, they were very conservative in that game. You can maybe go back to the Bears game. You can maybe talk about all the turnovers in the first game against the Browns this year, but the Broncos were the team that had them bottled up the most. And I would say that the Broncos in some ways resemble the Patriots, although the Patriots might be a little bit better on defense overall, maybe a lot better on defense overall. But strength of the Patriots is their secondary, their coverage unit. They do have Matt Judon as a pass rusher. They do have some guys up front as well. But Mac Jones, not terribly frightening. Decent running game. The weapons not too scary up there in New England, and you get to play them in Cincinnati. So the threat of Bill Belichick cheating is slightly lower, right? So
Mm-hmm.
take away that Gillette Field edge that they've had in New England. But I think that all those games are winnable. After the Chargers game, I said that I wouldn't hate that rematch in the playoffs. I'd like the matchup for the Bengals in a lot of ways, despite how weird that first game was. But yeah, I mean, the Raiders are a team that the Bengals absolutely punished. And I know that the Raiders are a little bit hot right now, and they could go off at any time. They've won 3 in a row. They need to make it 4 in a row to get into the playoffs, because these teams are not going to take knees. So I honestly don't hate any of those matchups, but yeah, it's hard to argue with the Raiders being the most favorable matchup, even though they do have those pass rushers, just because for me, Joe Burrow's familiar with them. Their defense is not very scary, especially in the secondary. And Joe Mixon loves playing against the Raiders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. That is a really good point. And yeah, I just think when you look at playoff droughts, and that's going to be the talk all week. Like it is. It's in how this team is and everything like that. I don't want to have to go through Darth Vader, right? And that's what Bill Belichick is. And I want to try to avoid him and make sure that Joe Burrow has his Peter Parker senses all the way on point to become Spider-Man, because Spider-Man would kick Darth Vader's ass. I love how I tied that together, unplanned, but it worked. And my point is, but my point is I don't like, as smart as Burrow is, Bill Belichick's been here, done that. Like, as smart as Zac Taylor is, Bill Belichick was winning Super Bowls when Zac Taylor was like 4. So like Zac's 38, Belichick was winning Super Bowls in the mid 80s. So like that's part of it. So yeah, if you can avoid that, that's fine. And if you see them down the line, that's fine too. I love the idea of playing in Nashville though, 5-hour drive. in that round too. If you have to go on the road, you know how many Bengals fans are going to be there? I'm making that drive, and I'm using Get Upside on the way. So, whoo-wee.
There you go. Uh, I had another point that has since escaped me, James.
Yeah,
So I
because I
guess,
I hit you with that Spider-Man 1-2 web action.
yeah, just really taking my eye off the ball here. That's okay. We can wrap up there. We'll cover the playoff situation tomorrow once we know when the Bengals are playing, who the Bengals are playing, what the rest of the seeds are, what the path to the Super Bowl, dare I say, in front of Zac Taylor, Cincinnati Bengals would be. Oh, I remember what I was going to say, James, just in time for people to have turned us off because I was doing an outro. Uh, it's that a lot of common opponents for the Bengals. Remember how Joe Goodberry had the thing about common opponents
Yep.
for Andy Dalton? It used to be bad for Andy Dalton. It's good for Joe Burrow. You can't fool Joe Burrow twice. Joe Burrow's never seen the Bills, and he's never seen the Patriots. So
No,
everyone else, or maybe the Titans too. Did they play the
no, he
Titans
beat the
last year?
Titans last year before the
Yeah,
bye.
that's
They
right.
beat the Titans.
So he's seen all these other teams. So there's that factor I think at play. And the other thing, shout out John Sheeran again here. It's either you're hoping for either the Raiders and to put the curse of Bo Jackson to bed, or you got to go through the guy that has run the most recent AFC dynasty in Bill Belichick. Those are
Yeah.
your two first round options for the Bengals. Now that being said, let's wrap up this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Back tomorrow to look at the playoff picture overall. We'll be joined by Bengals Sands this week. We're going to do instead of a film review of preseason game number 4 in week 18, we're going to look ahead at the Bengals playoff opponent. That'll be coming your way a little bit later this week. And then it's playoff preview, baby. Until next time, Bengals fans, AFC North Bengal champions, the Cincinnati Bengals. Man, I butchered that. Hoo day, and have a good one.